My name is Pamela Ewen, and I'm here with Erica Spindler. We've just concluded a meeting of the Northshore Literary Society in Mandeville, Louisiana, which is just north of New Orleans, about 20 miles north, right over the lake. And Erica was our speaker today. We've just sort of sliced and diced her latest novel, but I have some questions that we didn't get to, and I think everybody would be really interested in finding out about the answers to these questions. I'm thinking really about a fascinating thing about your writing, Erica, is that you really distinguish between good and bad in your books. You have heroines and heroes that are really good, and you have villains that are really, really bad. And sometimes you joke and you talk about your dark gift. But explain. It's funny when you talk about it, and yet I think it also sort of explains a little bit about where you're going with this good and evil and darkness and light.
I'm really fascinated with good and evil and the battle between good and evil. And, I've thought about it a lot, having grown up in kind of a wacky family, didn't grow up as a Christian, became a Christian later in life, and kind of blending the stories of my mother with her, she left the Catholic Church feeling guilty about marrying an inappropriate man, and kind of weird spiritual stuff and stuff about the devil, and then blending all that with my later Christianity and learning more about the big battle between good and evil. And in my books, it's really is it's pretty black and white. There's somebody who's evil, and there's good, and there's kind of an epic battle.
I think that's what makes your books especially interesting to readers too, because people like the battle between darkness and light, and they like to see the good guy win in the end. And in your books, there's always a really good resolution. I've noticed that in the introductions to your book, you almost always say that you dedicate the story to your God. Do you think that is that something pervasive that has brought this out? Did that come first, and then you started writing, or do you just write and that comes out because that's the way you think and that's a part of
you? The writing came first. That, like I said a couple minutes ago, that I wasn't always a Christian. So, as a writer, I wrote a bunch of books, and then, as I learned more about Christianity and Christ, and to who, all the blessings come from, and who really deserves the praise, I just felt really called that since I do write these books, they're read by so many people, that one way to share my faith was to thank God for the battle. The idea of, I write secular fiction, I write, it's not Christian fiction, even though there's the theme of good and evil. And, battle with the idea of how do I share my faith through secular fiction. And a way I did come upon was giving thanks to God in the acknowledgments for every one of my books, because that's who has given me the gift to share. And there's, so many people read the books and that they see the acknowledgement. So to me, it's my little form of evangelism.
I think that's fascinating, because some of the greatest writers in the world are secular writers, writing for secular audiences, like Tolstoy, and yet their works include a very strong Christian sort of background, and it comes from a Christian point of view. So I believe very strongly that you don't have to preach to get a Christian thought out there. I think it's actually much better to have a really good story that's entertaining, with characters that enact the message and a plot that conveys the message, as opposed to stating the message clearly.
I agree with that. It's like you don't have to hit people over the head
Right.
with
Right.
a message. That isn't the best way to reach people. When I was studying art, one of the art teachers said to me, you can't stand over a flower and yell at it to grow. You know, so if you can entertain them and give them a message, and if you look at the stuff that C.S. Lewis did, and, you know, the metaphor and, you know, everything that he did in his work, and he was writing, you know, great stories for kids.
Art is a very good example too, because if you look at art, if you have a great piece of work that's been done that strictly represents what you're looking at, and it's almost like a photograph of what you're looking at, that's not nearly as interesting to me as looking at the same subject, but leaving some things out of it, so that it leaves the reader in the case of a book, or it leaves the viewer in the case of art, the ability to wonder what's in the empty spaces and to think more about it and to sort of build on the suggestion of the picture.
I agree. Absolutely. It's the mystery of it.
Yeah, that's the mystery of
Yeah,
writing.
it is.
Yes.